We will call this meeting in order for December the 21st. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brief explanation of the procedure tonight. We will first hear the applicant as presented by the staff. Then anybody that's speaking for or against the application will be stepped forward and we will hear their presentation. At that point, we'll ask for the public portion to be closed, and then we will then move forward and have questions for those that have been stepped forward this evening. Yeah, perfect. Anyone that is speaking or testifying and they need to be sworn in, so this can be done either as a group or individually. We ask that you use the stand. When you come to the stand, please state your name and address for the record. All documents, photographs, and evidence presented for each case will be accepted by the board, and the chair will rule whether the additional items to be offered will be accepted or rejected. The person representing each case can withdraw that document. The zoning administrator or staff will present a brief summary, as I said before. Once the BZA presentation is complete, you'll have the opportunity to present your case. Then we will motion to close the public portion. Following that, we will have a motion or second to accept or deny the appeal. I don't see anything going to be disrespectful tonight, so we don't even go into that section. So we will do a roll call, please.
Ms. Owens?
Present.
Mr. Bartle?
Present.
Mr. Shutt?
Present.
Mr. Wilson?
Present.
Mr. Roberto?
Present. Next, we will swear in anyone that is going to be speaking this evening. Have you signed in? Looks like I got 2 people that have signed in for one of the cases. If you plan on speaking this night, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth before the Board of Zoning Appeals? Say, I do.
I do.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. So our first case tonight would be BZA 2022-17. The applicant who is representing the property is appealing the zoning administration's decision for a refusal to issue a zoning certificate for an accessory structure. Property being located at 7539 Colerain Avenue. This is parcel number 510-0071-0020-00. Applicant is SMJ International, and the property owner is Ganapathy LLC. Does the staff have a presentation?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from this case.
Okay, we've noticed that going to be a recusal, and are you going to then come back for the other case?
Yes.
Okay, so we would ask that you step out, and we will have the alternate step forward. Mr. Seidel? Sir, for joining us. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Roberto. As stated, the applicant is representing the property owner who is appealing the zoning administrator's decision for refusal to issue a zoning certificate for an accessory structure. The property is located at 7539 Colerain Avenue. The applicant is SMJ International, and the property owner is Ganapathy LLC. The property in question is located in the southeastern quadrant of the township. Here's an aerial with some street names and some nearby businesses, so you can get an orientation for where the property is located. Right by the Duke Energy Center down in South and Groesbeck. Here's the surrounding zoning. So it's surrounded by a variety of different zoning districts, including R7, PDB, and B3, and the directly adjacent to the property in question. Again, here's an aerial of the property, and then a property map showing the property as well, and then the topography as well. Here's a street view taken from November 2022, showing kind of a street level of what the property looks like. And then here you can get a better seeing of the cell tower located in the rear of the property. The applicable zoning is Article 4, subsection 4.5, subsection 4.5.5, A and B, and C as well. Also, subsection 4.5.7A, highlighting modifications to final development plans. Here are sections of the zoning resolution that were shown in the applicable zoning. And for the proposed plan, SMJ International, on behalf of the property owner, proposed the included plan, appealing the zoning administrator's decision for refusal to issue a zoning certificate. They are looking to replace an existing generator on the facility for the cell tower located at 7539 Colerain Avenue in the rear of the property. So here's an image showcasing the property in question, and where the refusal came from is the FDP for the adjacent property. The in-town suites had an FDP showing an emergency access where the cell tower, around where that cell tower is located. So highlighted where it says emergency access required per FDP. There's supposed to be no parking and an emergency access to allow emergency vehicles to come in case of an emergency. However, there's a cell tower there and there's parking there, so it's in violation of the FDP, which is why staff had refused the applicant's proposal. So we felt that the variance review criteria was sufficient for making the decision for this.
Resolution on there?
I didn't.
Okay.
I
I take over this point?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to sort of step in this point. This one is a little bit of a murky case in the sense that it's really, I'm almost a sense in the applicant in this case. The applicant is not present tonight. The line that Mr. Springsteen quoted was basically the zoning administrator cannot approve any plan that is in direct conflict with a Board of Trustee resolution. This is an odd one because the Board of Trustee resolution is on the property to the south. In this case, it's now in town suites when it was approved as suburban lodge. And on that FDP, it clearly states on the FDP, as I believe is presented in the packet, there's an emergency access. No landscaping may be in that area. No parking can be in that area. The current property owner to the south, in this case in town suites, they are in violation of their FDP. Additionally to that, I do not see any course of action in the zoning resolution that allows me, as a zoning administrator, to approve the application as presented. And sort of the onus was basically, I don't see a path I can take, and additionally, on a professional side, I wouldn't want to approve something that is in a emergency access area that is designated for that. Now, as a caveat to that, in-town suites is in all kinds of violations, but especially as a particular matter of the emergency vehicle access, there is a cell tower there. The cell tower went up sometime after the year 2000 and sometime between 2006. Not exactly sure. We don't have records in our department of when the tower itself was constructed. The general consensus is basically for a cell tower, if it's in non-residential, which in this case it isn't non-residential, any property is non-residential, for the tower, townships have almost no say whatsoever. So that's kind of an odd thing. They can just put it up. They being whoever the cell tower owner is, whenever they put it up, they did it, and it cut off that emergency access. I did not feel comfortable in any way approving any additional impediment to the emergency access requirement for the FDP for, I think, obvious reasons of if there was an emergency event. I didn't want it on staff to have said, oh, we approve that, and to come back. I know we have immunity. I believe, but at the same time, kicked it up. And then, Sarah, do you have anything to say as far as anything I didn't cover or anything I should cover on that?
I think Jared covered it. I think essentially the situation is we're at where we're at in Town Suites, which is not the subject property, is in violation of their development plan. The cell tower and battery structure that is at issue in tonight's case is already there at some point. It was approved by administration. We don't know who did that, is my understanding from talking to staff. I don't think you were able to find records of it last we spoke. But the point is, at this point, it is there, so I think Jared's point is it's before the board to make this decision because he, as the zoning administrator, is unable to.
I can speak a little bit to that. That cell tower was put in before we changed our zoning. They snuck it in before we put cell towers into our zoning regs. And so that's kind of what I think happened in this particular situation is there was one there and I think Firestone both snuck them in right before the regulation was put into place. So I guess the question that I have for staff is, who's in violation? Is the cell tower in violation, or is the hometown suite in violation to where, I mean, because they want to, if they have something that's existing, they want to replace it. Are they actually the culprit causing this violation, or is it the in-town suites because they're not keeping that access lane open?
It's tricky. The property owner to the north, in this case, the subject property, as far as I understand, or any documents I've seen, they have no obligation to keep that area open as emergency access. Will they have some kind of liability? Not for me to say. It'd be
And
way
they're
outside.
separate property owners, correct?
And separate property owners, that is correct as well, and separate zoning, so one being obviously PDB, as Mr. Springsteen said, the other being B2. It's all kinds of stickiness in this one, to use a technical term. And it was just something where I don't see a method of which I am able to approve it if I know it's in direct conflict of a Board of Trustee resolution, even if it could be approved as of right in the zoning it's in. I'm in a weird spot on this one.
But from the board's perspective, we can make a decision irrelevant of your situation.
I believe so, yeah. Yep, you could say, get variance to that clause, or you could say,
All right,
so.
very good. Any other questions for staff? Are you finished with your presentation?
Yeah.
Any questions for staff? Anybody? Okay. And the applicant's not present, so we can just.
It was a thing where it's really, as much as I could be, I'm the applicant in a sense of I communicate with the company, Drew Napick, I believe is how he pronounces his name, and said I would present the case basically on their behalf in a sense, because it's just a technicality. I'm just pigeonholed in by the resolution.
Okay.
As far as I understand it.
All right. Is there anyone here speaking on behalf? See none. Is anyone speaking in opposition? See none. Can I have a motion to close the public portion?
So moved.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion and second made. Any discussion?
I have a question. So, if the cell tower is not technically in violation because we don't have any jurisdiction over the cell tower, the actual generator structure that they want to replace, or is this addition? There's already one there, and they just want to replace this. So, when they replace it, it's actually attached to the cell tower.
It's wired to it.
Definitely wired to it.
So
Yep.
if we don't have any jurisdiction over the actual tower, do we have jurisdiction over what's actually attached to it?
It's my understanding that yes, we do.
It's accessory.
Yep, it's accessory structure.
Okay,
Great-
that was
great
my
question.
question. Thank
Very
you.
good question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, it would appear to me without the new generator, we would have a defunct cell tower that would have to be removed. That's creating a hardship
True.
for the current owner, who we don't have any record if they did it with or without.
Well, right now, we're in the motion to close the public portion, and we can
I'm
ask all
sorry.
these questions in the next section, so is
Right,
everybody okay
excuse
with that? We'll move into the questions next. So can we have a roll call vote to close the public portion?
Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Saito?
Yes.
Mr. Shup?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes. All right, now we can ask questions, open freely. So and that's kind of my same feelings on this situation is I mean, we're creating a hardship on the cell tower when they're not really the problem for the fire lane.
I suspect that to be the case unless there's some requirement, if there's a requirement for cell towers to have a backup generator by some other agency or just a matter of good business practice, I'm not sure. In the past year, a significant amount of these applications have come through, or these proposals, where they're replacing these generators. I suspect there's something behind that, some initiative driving that, whether it's regulation at some different level, or just a good business practice, best practice in a private sector level, I'm not sure. In this case, where it's an accessory structure to the cell tower, I'm not necessarily certain that, I mean,
But the question is the accessory structure, if it wasn't for this fire lane, is it in violation of any violation?
not that I'm aware of, no.
I mean, it's within the setback variances are allowed.
Yes.
It's accessible for our fire department. They can get to it, because I drove over there to it. They can squirt it from every angle. So we're penalizing these people for somebody else's problem, is how I'm gathering this.
The access, I'm sorry, you said the fire department have access,
Right.
To
By not
the-
having by them not having a fire lane access, because they can't get through. But, I mean, that's like saying, all right, I got a house fire next door, and you're gonna go through my house to get to put out the fire? Well, it's whose rights are being violated? And I think we're violating, personally, I don't know about anybody else's feeling, we're violating these people's rights as a cell tower user that's already there, and all they're wanting to do is replace they're not expanding the use, they're replacing their current, and they're not making anything larger, as far as I can tell. Is that all accurate?
as far as I can tell, that seems to be accurate, yep. And then, as you stated, the only exception to this particular one is that it happens to be located in an area designated on a separate property, as you used an analogy for, as access. It was just one of those things where,
But because the way it is, you in the zoning department, because it's not accessing a fire lane, you want to try to provide some, but the fire lane's not there regardless, because if there's a car there and they're parking the cars there, having that generator is not gonna make any effect whether it's there or not, because they can't get through the cars.
I believe that for the most part to be, I'd say firefighters they'd probably tell you they get through cars.
Well, I'm sure they could,
Anyway,
but
but
they'd have to go through a fence and,
Fence,
I mean, they're
vehicles.
going on against somebody else's property to go and take care of the one that's causing.
absolutely, and in this case, the only thing that prevented me, as far as I can interpret it, from issuing the certificate, again, if any other property would have been issued, was that line that it's a major modification, any change or any effect to an FDP, and while that is generally talking about the property for which the FDP is on, it doesn't quite explicitly say that in that sense. I just didn't feel that I have that authority through the zoning resolution.
And I look at it, this is a shed, you're taking an old shed and replacing it with a new shed. I mean, really, it's essentially what it is, and it's attached to a tower that, whether we like it or not, it's where it is. And I can't make I still can make a motion, but I mean, if I was to make a motion, I'd approve the variance personally, because I think we're violating their rights.
Here's my question, and I think, Jared, you kind of alluded to it earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some kind of tone or language around, if anything was to happen, and it's a violation, could we somehow be liable if someone in the end, I forget the name of the adjacent property, got hurt, and for some reason they could say it was because the fire department didn't have adequate access to get to them in time because of this structure that has come before the board and we've approved it? Is there some question about that?
Again, it doesn't make logical sense, because there's still a barrier there that's currently, there's a fence, so they're taking the fence down to get to this access point it's in question on the adjacent property. And, you know, it's, again, it's their property, and it's their property right. It'd be like me coming, I'm gonna give the same analogy. I mean, it's like them coming and trying to tear your house down because it's in the way of putting out somebody else's fire. Well, that's not right. Why would we, Colerain Township, be liable because we approved this when, one, it's already there, and two, the ones that is causing the issue is the adjacent property by not following the law and then allowing a fire lane clearance. I mean, they're causing their own harm.
I think you guys are experiencing the predicament I've been in for a while.
Yeah.
It's a very juxtaposition. It's a kind of a one-off. It probably won't happen many more times ever. But it's that thing of, you know, if you know it's there, does it change it legally? Does it change it morally? Does it change it whatever?
Well, I guess the question back to the applicant, and you're the applicant, could they move the generator to a different location that would like satisfy the need of the fire department?
I would think that there would be a way to do that, in my opinion. It could be located in a place that might be less obtrusive to, or less encumbering of access. I would suspect.
How does that help the fire department when there's cars parked in the parking lot?
And a fence there, I mean, is that, you know, is that taking a water bucket off the Titanic? I'm not sure.
Right.
Again, it was just that thing of the mindset I have. I don't know if it's good or bad, I kind of picture worst-case scenario and then try and work back from there. If this hotel complex were to, you know, have a major catastrophe or something, and it would come up, that we, at least for my position, so I did all I could to represent the township, the citizens, and property owners involved to mitigate, yeah, you know, any you know, health, safety, and welfare as much as possible. Beyond that, that's the only reason zoning exists. So in this scenario, that's what led me here to say, I am, in my opinion, as I interpret the zoning resolution, I can't make the decision regardless, because it explicitly says I cannot approve something that is in direct conflict with the trustee resolution. But then there's the other side of it too. Any other property, and same thing, tearing down a house, that analogy, it's a conundrum. So
I'll go back to the original, my statement. Is the accessory that's currently there and the proposed accessory within the zoning regulations, with the exception of it being adjacent to a fire lane?
say that again.
It's, everything else about that structure is within
Yes.
its requirements.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The only thing that is not within its, and it's not even really, it's not their responsibility, but it's because it's adjacent to what should be a fire lane. But it's not a fire lane, irregardless if that structure's there or not, because they got vehicles parked where the fire lane should be.
That is a true statement, that is another impediment to it. The fence, the
So-
vehicles.
I guess it goes back to, why is it this applicant's problem?
The whole thing kicking back of if, being aware of a scenario like this, if they make the decision to go forward with it, all I can do is say I did as much due diligence as much as I could to represent the township to affect what was proposed back in, I believe is 98, 99, 96, 97? 97, I think. So when the trustees voted on this, and I believe it was 97, 96, if that was the intent then, was to have safe, access there, all I can do is all I can do to ensure it, but legally, to ensure that that's the case and that that's effectuated, and beyond that, it's out of my hands. So
So you've done your job, now it's up to us to make a decision.
yes, sir.
So I would like someone to either approve or deny, make a recommendation. I'm gonna still hold firm and not make any recommendations.
I'll make a motion to approve the appeal to enable the zoning administrator to issue a zoning certificate for an accessory structure.
Okay, motion's been made, second?
Second.
Mr. Saito just seconded it. Does anybody want to discuss it?
Yes, I was wondering if we could put a stipulation there that it can't exceed the footprint that they've expressed.
I think they gave drawings. I mean, pretty detailed drawings.
It was very detailed.
Yeah, and so as far as staff can see, that there's nothing is changing in this footprint, correct?
Nope.
Then I'll withdraw that.
All right, so motion and second been made. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Owens,
No.
Mr. Saito,
Aye.
Mr. Shupp,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes. I'll tell them it's approved, but they're not here, so you can.
Well,
Pass it
you're
along.
telling me that I can issue it, so
Yes.
thank you. Thank you, board, thank you for discussing that.
Thank you.
So, it's one of those ones, every once in a while we get a tricky one, and that was a tricky one.
And I appreciate that, I don't know, kind of like cutting the baby in half. BZA 2022-18, this is the applicant who's representing the property owner, is requesting a variance for our zoning 15.8.3, subsection D, freestanding signs. Location of the property is 9024 Colerain Avenue. Parcel is 510-0104-0111-00. The applicant is Commercial Site Acquisitions Incorporated, care of Casto, and the property owner is McCluskey Chevrolet Incorporated. Does the staff have a presentation?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
So as you stated, the applicant, who is representing the property owner, is requesting a variance to subsection 15.8.3D, freestanding signs. The property is located at 9024 Colerain Avenue. The applicant is Commercial Site Acquisitions, and the owner is McCluskey Chevrolet. So it's located more in the southeastern quadrant. It's right by Compton and Pool Road, also by Joseph, along Colerain Avenue. The surrounding zoning is, again, a plethora of different zoning districts. Directly adjacent is B2 and PDB. Here's an aerial of the property in question. And here you can see the adjacent zoning again, with being B2 and PDB. There's a property map kind of showing the property in question, as well as the topography. Here's a view coming from the north side heading south towards the property in question. And then here is from the south going north. The question of the property is the white building right there. So the applicable zoning is Article 15, signs. It's 15.8, talking about freestanding signs in a B2 district for 1 and 2. And then also 15.9, I'm talking about off-premise signs. And then here's the definitions of the on-premise and off-premise signs. And then the portions of the zoning code related to those. So the proposed plan by the applicant is to erect a sign on the property in question at the old McCluskey dealership. It'd be 15 feet in height, and the square footage of the sign would be 66 square feet, and it would have 2 signs, more or less, within that 66 square feet. Here's the property in question. Here's more or less a visual of what the sign might look like. And the proposal is for one of those faces for an adjacent property. And one of the other face would be for the property it is located at. Now, so here's the variance review criteria. So the reason for the variance in question is our zoning resolution does not allow for off-premise signs. The sign itself, you can have an off-premise sign, but that off-premise sign must be the sole use of that parcel in question. So the variance would actually be to 15.9.1 C. It's located. It's a permitted use. I'm in a B2 district. It's staff's recommendation for tabling the request. We put out the legal ad for subsection 15.8.3 D, which is not the subsection that the variance would need to be made in order to meet what the applicant is requesting. And the staff feels that we could also work with the applicant to maybe come up with a product that best suits Colerain Township and the applicant itself, which is our reason for the recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Anything you'd like to add?
Applicant present? State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, good evening. My name is Brent Myers, Senior Development Manager with Casto, Columbus, Ohio, 43215, 250 Civic Center Drive, Suite 500. And I'm here with Eric Leibowitz, who's Vice President of Development and Leasing for Casto as well. So we appreciate the board's time this evening and working with staff as we've worked through this question in terms of the sign that we're proposing. As alluded to in the staff presentation, we are planning a redevelopment of this site, the former McCluskey Auto Dealership. And as part of that proposed development, we have a proposed pylon sign. This site shares common access with Target to the rear through the Target parcel. And as we've been working with Target regarding documentation related to that access and a few other items, the request has come to work with Target to provide additional signage for Target on our panel or on our sign as well. Target feels that additional visibility here is important to them in this location. And so we have worked with staff to try and identify exactly what was needed to permit a Target panel on our premises, which would be off premises for Target. And in reviewing the code, we realized that there is the section that we alluded to, or was alluded to earlier, 15.8.3, which gives the regulations for on-premises pole signs. There is nothing within that code section which addresses off-premises signs. It's our understanding in similar instances that you wouldn't read prohibition into existence that isn't there. So in our minds, there may be a question in terms of whether or not an off-premise panel is actually prohibited. We understand there's a section that references billboards and off-premises signs. It seems the intent of that is more for what you would traditionally think of with a billboard. That would provide for more than double the square footage of graphic area for the sign, as well as height of the sign, which we're not trying to open it up to those standards. The sign that we have presented and designed was intentionally designed to meet what would be the requirements for Chapter 15.8.3 freestanding signs. So this sign would be permitted other than the fact that there is an off-premise panel located on it, and hence where the question came up in terms of what was needed to make sure that we were in conformity and that this sign would be permitted, and hence why we submitted for the variance. I guess, understanding it sounds like there may be a question regarding how this is being interpreted. I would ask the question in terms of if we're seeking a variance, if the understanding is that perhaps an off-premise panel is not permitted on a sign in section 15.8.3, could we not still be seeking a variance to that code section to confirm that this off-premise panel would be permitted on that sign? Therefore, I think that would get around the concern regarding the publishing of the variance that was referencing a different chapter, if that makes sense.
Again, to jump in and add a little bit more color.
Name and
State your
address,
name
please.
and-
Yes, absolutely. Eric
Thank you.
Leibowitz, Vice President of Development and Leasing, Casto, 250 South Civic Center Drive, Columbus, Ohio, 43215.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. To include a little bit more color, as Brent said, we feel, I don't know if this is a quality or not, but we seem to always find the tweener sections of various codes, and this seems to fall into that where it doesn't seem, as Brent said, prohibited, but it seems to be in between two code sections, and so our ask was to find, if we couldn't find, we didn't want to name two variances where one might be necessary, and so some of this was to come before you and say, rather than make some end around and assume there is no variance because it's not named and it's some of the tweener, in our opinion, this was an affirmation of the fact that what we're asking for is permitted, but making sure so under your code by submitting the application for the variance section we did. So we're appreciative of the time tonight, happy to answer any questions or provide additional background as may be necessary as there are layers to it, and we're happy to address those questions. And just as a quick addition, McCluskey did have a sign there previously. When they closed, they took it down. That had different lighting, flashing lighting. We are not proposing anything like that. This would just be a simple 2-panel sign. We feel less visually invasive, and as Brent said, just sort of that in today's world of merchandising and customer access and convenience, which we're all experiencing on a daily basis, this was something when discussions with Target, they said, hey, if there's an opportunity to facilitate an additional sign and Valvoline's on board with it, we would be appreciative of that opportunity to help strengthen the Colerain Avenue store, add more visibility. Since there's already access in place, it seemed to be pretty cohesive, and that's part of the conversation here, just background-wise with Target.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor? Anyone speaking in opposition? I have a motion to close the public portion.
I make a motion to close the public portion.
Motion been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Saito? Mr. Shupp?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes. All right, we'll go to the question. The question and answers now is where we get to do that part. We'll go with Mr. Wilson. If you go, please.
Nothing at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Shupp?
I'm not sure I completely understand what are we suggesting putting Target on the other part of the panel?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. That was all I had. I was just, thought that was interesting.
The reason that there's no graphics up there is, despite the fact that we're able to talk about both tenants here, since we are not employed by them, it is difficult for us to they get a little edgy about us making representations or providing their graphics, so thank you for your patience with that.
Okay.
Ms. Owens?
Just out of curiosity, the sign that is kind of there right as you turn into the driveway that goes towards the car wash, is that sign gonna stay there as well?
The Target sign?
The Target sign?
Yes, they're not proposing removal of any signs. I think to some degree, there was,
So that one's gonna stay,
yes, all
and
there
then
is
there'll
is
be
sign.
another one.
This is a supplemental, additional graphic area that they've asked for in support of the store.
Can you give us the one from the other angle?
Sure.
Coming from the south, going north.
There we go.
Thank you. And currently the pole, if I'm correct, is kind of out in the middle of the parking lot there.
That's it. Yep, behind the utility pole. Or the previous McCluskey sign.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Seidel, or Ms. Owens, are you done? Mr. Seidel, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
All right. Are there Ohio regs on this? Because I know in real estate, we can't do this in real estate.
Well,
So
Ohio
that's
regs,
under Ohio Treasury. I don't know if how that affects land, but we have to represent who we represent. And your property would have to represent your property and not somebody else's. So that's where the confusion may come in. Are they gonna be able to access Target then through your property?
Yes.
Okay.
which they already can, is that correct?
Yes, the access in place, and really the crux of the situation is there is access, it is existing, it is not of record. And so as part of the conversation with Target and in doing our due diligence in the acquisition and redevelopment of the McCluskey site, we've done a significant amount of work primarily in Columbus with Target, and we went to them, we have a great relationship, and said, we'd like to make this a record for our own selfish reasons, and they said, great, no problem, while we're doing this. And they referenced, again, we have no background on this, but that the northern access point, I think, had a left in that was removed. And so, again, retailers always want to increase visibility and access wherever possible, and so when we were saying we wanted to document this cross-access, they said if there's an opportunity to create this, an additional sign opportunity, and so that's where we went to Valvoline and said, can we work within, reduce the sign area in total so that it's permissible in terms of the graphic area, but it shows 2 tenants versus 1. So that trying to fit within the code, but just sort of accommodate this, again, I apologize for this, for the phrase, the unscientific phrase of tweener, but that's sort of where it falls in our mind. And that's how this originated. So hear you loud and clear, and
Sure.
in City of Columbus, you know, it's off-premise graphics are defined for not just billboards, and so Brent in particular did a lot of digging to make sure that we were into the code section appropriately. You guys have been very helpful, and so when we were putting together the application, staff's not responsible for doing our job. You know, we took the best shot at saying, here's what we think applies, and this is what we, in terms of the variance application, which is why we made it under that code section.
If I could make a quick statement about a couple things, I'll be as concise as possible. The sign as presented could be approved as of right.
Correct. It's
However,
having the graphics.
Nothing else can be on the property,
Yeah.
which I don't think, it's gonna be awkward to advertise for Valvoline that can't be there per the zoning code.
Correct.
Right? So really, the sign presented, if they wanted to, at the moment, they could put that sign up as presented. It meets all other
The other
aspects.
code, yeah.
It'd be awkward. Can we approve a sign that advertises a business that's not there? I guess we could, because we just say it's 2 off-premises signs, but you get,
So that was where the billboard element came in, and we felt that in interpreting that, the height, the square footage seemed to be for a true billboard, which didn't seem to match intent, and we knew at some point we'd be having this conversation, but the last thing we wanted to do, as we said earlier, was to make some untransparent end around and not have the dialogue. We'd rather come to you, come to staff, and say, this is what we're after, this is how we think it fits within your code, or doesn't fit, and this is why we're asking for this variance, and proceed accordingly. So it was one of those where we didn't have the perfect answer, and the interpretation piece, rather than ask for 2 variances, we felt we took this tact and said, this is the one that applies here. We obviously could be wrong, but we felt that was the most appropriate in the scenario, since neither one fit very cleanly.
thank you. And then on the screen is the definition for off-premise signs. Shall mean any sign, including billboards, that advertise or otherwise directs attention to an activity not on the same lot where the sign is located. So it is any sign. It mentions billboards a few times, so I could see how, you could think it's skewed towards that, but it is any sign, per our definitions in Article 16.
But can they give an easement?
Well, on that note, this early summer, late spring, I think you guys may be able to correct me on the timeline, given your involvement. Our office got, inundated with calls regarding any existing easements there. There was a driveway permitted, years ago. It seemed to be, it was my, go ahead.
That was probably our title agent.
Okay.
Doing their examination.
Sure.
And as part of that, so if that created a
Yeah,
headache.
and then one of our most prominent surveyors, company, engineering firms, Abercrombie, they called and even gave my boss, Mr. Miller in the back there, a little bit extra attention to get us moving and see what we could do. And it was just my interpretation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that there may have been some sense that there was a pressure on the property, in this case, the former McCluskey, on whoever's gonna buy that this is just my interpretation, that there's pressure on them that this might be some type of quid pro quo kind of thing, like put signage for us out front on Colerain, and if you do that, then we'll give you this access. Is there any?
It's hard for us to
Okay,
speak.
perfect,
to
because I don't know either.
A conversation that we were not necessarily privy to.
Okay.
We're talking to McCluskey folks, our team here in the Cincinnati area. What I think we absolutely did do was due diligence in making sure that we understood the code in terms of the access conversation. Because of our relationship with Target, we were able to facilitate that, and we'd rather avoid going down the path of a prescriptive easement conversation, which is just it's doable and it's achievable in something like this, but frankly, not a path we wanted to pursue, and Target was not interested in that either. And so the conversation lent itself to, hey, is there a way to create a win-win here that reinforces the Colerain store for Target and allows the redevelopment here of what we feel like is a great national brand.
So my question, you're granting access to Target through your property without an easement.
Right now, there is access there that is not documented. We do not own the property.
You're avoiding my question.
Not intentionally.
Okay, so the intent is to give Target access through your property.
There will be there will be a declaration recorded that allows cross-access between the parcels.
And it's not a formal easement?
Yes, it is an easement.
So therefore, the property in question will belong to Target. You can put the sign on there. It's gonna have an easement on it with Target on it.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, our firm hasn't researched that specific issue because we weren't presented with the question until just now. It can certainly be researched. Off the top of my head, I don't think it would give Target.
my understanding of all the property law, that an easement does not convey the ownership of the property, just the right to cross it.
Right to use.
It's a right to some type of use,
Correct,
but it's not ownership.
Interest.
So based on this, it would still be an off-premise. And then if I can, we're having a technical difficulty here, but that's all right. Nothing we haven't experienced before. What we would really hope, our department would really like to break into would be that the development aspect of what we want to do is provide even a better solution where it's my understanding I've had a lot of conversations about this. I forget where it came from. So if I can say this, I will. But someone told me in the course of all of our conversations over this that this Target store is not in the top half of Target's performance stores. Being that we are a part of the development department of Colerain Township, that is a spot where we want to, what can we do to change that fact and in fact reverse that? And if we can do anything to get it in the top half, we want to do it. It's my opinion, this is not that, but if we could come to some type of agreement where we're looking at some other solution, some other sign, some other location, there we go, it's back on. That's what we would prefer, and we would hope, again, I think it was Brent maybe I spoke to and said we really want to get Target involved in this conversation, say, hey, what is the square footage? 66 square footage of sign isn't, I mean, I'm not an expert, I guess, in the advertising industry, but I wouldn't think that's going to take you to the top half. I don't know, I could be wrong, but.
They will, in our experience, retailers will take
anything they can get.
all signage they can get. If there's the Target is as creative as a retailer as we've dealt with. We obviously don't speak for them. We can facilitate dialogue with the real estate group, and if there's a solution that they feel is better for them, they're for sure going to listen, and we're happy to facilitate.
Can you go
that
back to the
dialogue.
zoning page? So the other part too. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, so I know staff had recommended that we table this. Do you need to table it for a month? Would that give you enough adequate time to have a better discussion and better presentation?
Whatever timeline the applicant thinks that they would need, and then they're, I don't know if Target is not your customer, whatever Target is to you, to get Target to reach out to our boss, David Miller, to have us really get to work to do a better plan.
Okay.
To make them successful.
Is the applicant agreeable to tabling this to give you a better opportunity to get a product that may or may not be approved? Right now, all I'm doing is just giving the board the opportunities. So what is your opinion on it?
Absolutely. We appreciate this dialogue. We appreciate the opportunity to do this on the floor. I think our answer is we're after the cross-access. We want to develop the Valvoline store. We want to redevelop the McCluskey site. If facilitating with Target is part of the equation, we can absolutely do that. And so what I would recommend is that because Target has so much going on, we end up, in this case, we are not working for them, but
Yep.
we will end up doing the legwork to facilitate. And we have a great relationship and work in tandem with them all the time. And I think can facilitate the conversation you're looking for. I guess if we're able to beg a question of if we can get an idea of what is there in terms of that better solution, that would be helpful. And without locking anybody in, if there's something even narratively, maybe not even visually, that you're able to share would be really helpful.
So given the fact that they're in a PD, there's a lot of options that could exist there. And then another part that I want to get to as well is say that the actual map does not reflect what my interpretation, what the PD was approved back in 2001. I'm doing all kinds of work to make sure I can verify that before I'd like to change that. But then also, with the reduced signage, wouldn't that hurt Valvoline by chance? Wouldn't they be, if they're only getting half the signage that they could for their area?
They feel it's adequate.
Yeah.
They're okay,
They're okay.
perfect. Again, I don't know anything about the advertising industry. So if it'd be acceptable to you, we would love to facilitate, we'd love to present a better option for the township and for Target. And maybe it will include this section as presented,
Well,
but then,
Valvoline will have signs on their building too, right? Yeah.
Yes, if whether Target's on a shared pylon or not, they will have, as you stated, Jared, they'll have the right to a pylon either way.
Correct.
that, and like I said, I'd like to see if we can figure out what actually was rezoned back
Their
in,
location is better than where it is currently, because right now it's a hazard for coming in that driveway.
I'm sorry?
Their proposed location is better than where it currently is. It's in the middle of a driveway,
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, it was not ideal. It was developed a long time ago, and there's a lot of updating that'll happen to that property. It's non-conforming lot, all kinds of stuff. But really, we would love to sit with Target. What does the township have to do from the development department aspect to get them to be whatever we can do, if anything, to get them in that top half.
If you guys are able to get sales numbers from Target, we'll take notes from you. With as many stores as we have with them, we still don't get all that data, but I think what you'll find is a receptive audience. We can facilitate that conversation, and ultimately, if the township is amenable to a dialogue that helps Target increase their presence on Colerain, I'd be shocked if they're not an active listener and participant in that conversation. And so
Excellent.
from a timing perspective, we were at a conference and I met with some of their folks 2 weeks ago. The last 10 days of the year, probably like for you guys, it's pretty slow in our world. So I think trying to facilitate a conversation after the first of the year as early as we can, and we'll report back to them tomorrow and try and get that set up. If that sounds reasonable.
Well, their timeframe for you, based on your knowledge, is 30 days reasonable? Is 60 days more reasonable?
I think 30 days would be great.
Perfect.
Okay, so this recommendations have been made from staff, from the applicant. Can we have someone make a motion to table for 30 days is what it sounds like.
Make a motion to table it for 30 days.
Mr. Seidel has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Shupp has made the second. And discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Owens,
Yes.
Mr. Saito,
Yes.
Mr. Shupp,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes. So we will see you in a month.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Appreciate it. If you get a chance to talk to Mr. Miller back there,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Thank you all. Happy holidays.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, too.
Same to you, thank you.
All right, so next on our, we have unfinished business. I see none. Do we have approval of the minutes from November the 30th, 2022?
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion been made and a second?
I'll second.
Second has been made. Discussion? Roll call vote?
Ms. Owens,
Yes.
Mr. Saito,
Yes.
Mr. Shupp,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes. And next meeting will be January the 25th. It's in my calendar, so I had the meeting next week, so. Administrative matters, the 2023 submission and meeting dates of the BZA members and appointments will be next week, or next month. And we will also be electing officers at that same time. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Come with your thinking caps on. And it's the staff have anything else?
So the board did approve the the meeting schedule as presented at last meeting, and it's up there. And then they also made approvals for board members themselves. So Mr. Wilson will no longer be with us now.
But he's still with us, just in
A different part of the month.
different part of the month.
Yes. And then
Mr. Injahees.
he withdrew.
Oh, he did.
Yes. So we are discussing recommendation for another full-time member.
Must be running for office. All right, so any other things to discuss?
No,
Do we have
I
a
think
motion
we're
to adjourn?
So moved?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second's been made. Roll call vote.
Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Saito?
Yes.
Mr. Shutt?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes. We are adjourned.